Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Finch, and special guests. DVUSD has concluded a very special fall sports season, and winter sports are now fully underway. This fall, we had several region and sectional players of the year, a region championship in football. 4 out of 5 of our football teams made it to the playoffs, with one reaching the quarterfinals, a volleyball team that played for the state championship, and a state champion swimmer. Tonight, we recognize our fall sports champion and runners-up. Athletes, after I read about your extraordinary accomplishment, please come forward, pick up your DVUSD logo pin and certificate off the table to my right, and go towards the stairs to have your photo taken with the superintendent and governing board. For the second year in a row, we honor Sandra Day O'Connor sophomore, KL Armijo, as the Division I 100-yard freestyle state champion. Last year, KL was the first freshman in a decade to win a Division I state championship title in swimming, and this year she didn't disappoint. She earned the state championship title in the 100-yard freestyle event with a time of 50.64 seconds. At the state championships this year, KL also tied for third place in the 50-yard freestyle. She just returned from competing in the junior national competition in Austin, Texas, and she participated in the 50, 100, and 200 freestyle events. KL started swimming when she was 11, and we look forward to seeing her compete for Sandra Day O'Connor in the years to come. Congratulations to the 100-yard freestyle state champion, Sandra Day O'Connor High School sophomore, KL Armijo. The Sandra Day O'Connor High School girls volleyball team's championship game found them in a rematch of their season-opening 5-set thriller back in August against Hamilton. O'Connor won that night. Each of the 4 sets went at least 45 points. The rematch of the championship game, however, went the other way, and O'Connor had to settle for runner-up. The team went undefeated in the regular season. They were very well balanced this season in terms of strength in all positions, and this team has grit. During their season, O'Connor earned a reputation for spirited comebacks. In the state semifinals against Tempe Corona del Sol, they fought back from losing the first 2 sets to keep their season alive. Next season will bring younger players into new roles and new faces in the middle. It was the first season for a new coaching staff, and they are excited with what they were able to accomplish. Congratulations to the 2021 Girls State Champion runners-up volleyball team from Sandra Day O'Connor High School. You want to go over? Congratulations. That concludes our awards and recognitions for tonight. The regular governing board meeting begins at 7.
followed by a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. Mrs. Reed, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Yes, I move that we adopt the agenda with the exception to pull item 7H for separate consideration.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, adopting the agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. All right, we will go to action item 3A, which is to approve the recommendation for the principal of school number 32. Mrs. Ordway, do you have a motion for us?
I would make a motion that the governing board accepts the approval of Dr. Joanne Schwarting as the principal of elementary school 32.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Mrs. Moffett, would you like to talk about Dr. Schwarting and your recommendation?
Can you hear? There we go. President O'Brien, governing board members, it is my pleasure to make the recommendation of Joanne Schwarting, Dr. Joanne Schwarting, as the selection for new principal of School 32. Joanne has been a longtime employee of the Deer Valley Unified School District as a teacher, assistant principal, and currently the principal of Desert Mountain. We are excited to have her join us for this new adventure.
All right. Are there any questions or discussion among the board members? Okay, then I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. And congratulations, Dr. Schwarting.
Is there a
Maybe
speech
you'd like to
comment?
join us at the microphone and say a few words, please.
Good evening, President O'Brien, Superintendent Finch, and members of the governing board. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank you for giving me the chance to build a caring and connected hub for this wonderful community. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schwarting. We are so excited to have you lead this new school and build that community over in that area. So wonderful. So now we will move on to our district reports. And tonight we will start with the finance reports, which is Ms. Mock.
Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, and guests. This evening, we will begin with the enrollment report for November. Due to the holidays, we only had enrollment reports published for the first couple of weeks in November, so the report that we have included in the governing board meeting this evening is from November 17th. At that time, we had a 1.9% increase in students from the same time last year, whereas we recently started tracking the change in enrollment from 18-19 to our present school year. And compared to this time during that school year, we still have a 3.3% decrease, as we had seen about a 5%, 5.2% increase last school year from the year prior. And with that, I will take any questions about the enrollment report.
Any questions? Seeing none, we will have you move on to the next report.
Thank you, President O'Brien. For our next report, we have our M&O budget report for the month ending in November. At this time, we are still projecting no carry forward. We have expended anywhere between 37 and 40% of our overall M&O budget for the school year. We are still keeping that $25 million in the committed budget balance, and that's a holding place for the footnote at the bottom of the report. We announced at the last board meeting that due to the state K-12, all K-12 public school budgets currently exceed the aggregate expenditure limit by $1.2 billion for this school year. Deer Valley's portion of that would be $36.37 million. As a reminder, that's nothing that Deer Valley did. That's a result of some changes to the formula for the aggregate K-12 expenditure budget limit. And we are hoping that the legislature will allow public K-12 districts to exceed that expenditure budget limit. The budget limit that we set is correct based off of the per student amount and the amount of students that we have for this school year. It's just that the current aggregate expenditure limit does not include the classroom site fund, and that is new for this year, and that is why we are seeing that increase. The legislature has until March 1st in order to permit the exception for the public school districts to exceed the aggregate budget limit. And so until that action is taken, we are going to be very cautious in what we project for carry forward and hold on to any of those committed balances. And I will take any questions about the budget report.
And Mrs. Mock, if the legislature does not take action by March 1st, 2022, is that correct?
Correct.
Then what are the consequences?
Deer Valley Unified School District would have to reduce its current year budget by $36.3 million. Currently, we have that $25 million in the committed budget balance, so we have a major portion of it held already, and we do still have grant funds available to us. We already included ESSER 2 in the building of this budget, if you'll remember back to last April and May, or May and June. But ESSER 3, which was more than double what ESSER 2 was, we do have funds held in that as well, just in case we need them. So we would be able to, with what we have held here and what we have in other grant funds available to us, be able to make those cuts.
Any other questions? Mrs. Paperman?
Can you explain to the community, I know Ms. Orway said the consequences, but if the legislator doesn't pass this, who's going to get affected? Like, where the budget cut's going to be, put in place?
Mrs. Paperman, that's a great question. President O'Brien, members of the board, that would be all public K-12 school districts in Arizona. Charter schools are excluded from this. Their funding formula is a little different. So it would be all pre-K-12, unified school districts, elementary school districts, and union high school districts would have to make cuts totaling $1.2 billion for all of public education.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mock, for that financial report. We'll move to our next report, which is Safe and Healthy Schools report. And for, what item is that for? Okay. Safe and Healthy School report, Dr. Zerbach.
Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening, I am pleased to present to you the Safe and Healthy Schools report. As for our agenda, it mirrors much of what we have done in the past. With these reports, we will start with a review of where we are at with our community level of transmission metrics. We'll then go into a couple of data points for our operational impact. We then will hit the meat of today's report, which is the updates to Q3's safety plan, review our COVID-19 testing opportunities, talk a little bit about communication to our stakeholders, given that we do have some updates for our Q3 safety plan. And then Mrs. Moffitt will take it from there for a couple of slides with respect to work being done with human resources and the return to work team. And then we will end, as we always do, with an opportunity for you to pose questions to us. Okay, so our first slide contains the case count per 100,000. And so you can see that we have been on an increase in trajectory for this particular case count. Our most recent data point shows 356.3, which puts us in the high threshold. And again, we have been in the high threshold for quite a long time. Our next slide shows the rate of positivity. This too has been on an incline. You can see our most recent data point puts us almost at 22%, which again puts us in the high threshold, which is due to it being over 10%. And again, we have been in the high threshold for that for quite some time. As far as our epi curve count from the county, again, this graph shows our case counts for the entire Maricopa County, and you can see that since late October, we have had a somewhat steady there. It's been on a slow increase. We've had a little bit of a decline during that late November period, and then it has come back up for our overall county case count. Our case count for school-age children is represented in this particular graph. Our 6 through 12 are in the orange, and our 13 through 18, or our secondary students, are in the green. And you can see that this largely mirrors what you saw in the previous slide with the case count, in that, again, since late October, we can see that we have been, in general, around in the same area with a few ups and one downturn there as well. Okay, our dashboard, as I always do for any community members that may be joining us for the first time, I want them to know that we do publish a dashboard for all of our campus sites along with a couple of district sites each Monday in the afternoon, and you can find it at that very convenient URL, dvusd.org/dashboard. This is a 6 data point or 6-week snapshot of where we have been with our DVUSD dashboard. So you can see at the end of October, starting there at 120, and then our most recent data point from yesterday is 164, which was posted on the website. And so you can see in between, again, some places where there was an increase from the October date, and then also a couple data points that had decreased from one week to another. But again, the range being between 120 and 180. For our impact on operations, you can see here that since our last board meeting where we provided these stats, that we see here approximately 40 positive cases transmitted, and then you can see approximately a little under 1,500 students quarantined during this particular time. For our vaccine update for children ages 5 to 11, we were very pleased to be able to hold a mini vaccination clinic or mini pod for our students age 5 years and above. Again, if you recall from our last board meeting, that this has been recently approved for emergency authorization, and we had 3 schools, Constitution, Sunset Ridge, and Terramar, looking at different areas of our school district that provided this opportunity for parents if they so chose, to have their child vaccinated. The 2 dates that we had were November 10th and December 3rd after school, and parents did have to be present if they wanted their child to be vaccinated, and we did have hundreds of parents that selected this option. In fact, it filled up quite quickly, even on the first evening. I believe most of our slots were full. And so as far as additional events, this might occur in Q3 when we come back. There were no additional events now, and that is due to the 3-week period between the shots. And if we had had one during the period after Thanksgiving, that would have put us into the winter break. And so if we do indeed move forward with additional events, and a couple of our schools have requested that, then we would do so when we return in January for those. Okay, that brings us to, as I mentioned at the start, the meat of today's update, and that is our Q3 safety plan update. And so I wanted to provide some context for the information that will follow. And so given that our transmission rate at school is relatively low, and you can see there that we estimate it being somewhere between 0.5 and 3%, given that we have thousands of DVUSD students that have missed school due to quarantine, and you are well aware of that. We've had several board reports which have showed the number of students, and we've also have had many public comments on this as well. And also the fact that we do have some students that have struggled with academic and social emotional due to time being away from school, in-person school, I should say. And also the time that is required to manage these tasks, which is taken verbatim from there, remains extremely high for all of those involved. So for our administrators, our front office secretaries, our nurses, there is much, much time that is required. And so time that they would normally be doing their quote-unquote regular responsibilities in the school, many times this is a major barrier as they are contacting families, talking to families about some of their questions, and managing the multitude of concerns that arise due to quarantine and exclusion. So that remains an obstacle for us. And then there's a new piece, and this is in bold and in greater font on purpose. This new piece is the vaccine for the students age 5+, which is a new factor in the equation for us to consider as we think about our safety plan. And so due to the items that are listed here on this particular slide, we have made adjustments to our Q3 safety plan for quarantine. And so I will go over these in this particular slide. And so you can see that moving forward on January 4th, when an exposure occurs at school, students would no longer be required to be excluded, okay? And the caveat to that is unless we were involved in an outbreak situation that perhaps presented some characteristics of getting out of control, if you will. When these types of outbreaks occur, DVUSD would utilize guidance from Maricopa County to determine if our students would need to be excluded in those particular situations. Now again, with these two bullet points, this particular situation is few and far between with the majority of our instances that occur with positive COVID cases. Again, the vast, vast majority of our COVID positive cases occur when individual students come from the home, the community, they are positive, they later learn of that, and then they are in isolation status, and then we have to quarantine students from that. And as I indicated in the prior slide, you can see that with that transmission rate, that it is not common to have additional students contract COVID because of a student who is positive at school. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. Is it common? No. So again, back to this, if these types of outbreaks occurred, we would perhaps consider the need to utilize exclusion from the county and perhaps the transition to virtual, which we have done at times, again, infrequently, but we have done. And if it were necessary, then we would look to utilize that because we do want to make our classrooms safe for our students and for our staff and for our community. There are two specific populations that could, not necessarily will, but could operate under some different parameters for us. And those two particular subgroups are our preschool students and our students at Vista Peak. For that, we really do look at our data, and as you know, we have voluminous data as far as who contracts COVID-19 when students have it and who doesn't. And so with the two subpopulations that are listed here, there are two factors at play. One, the preschool students do not have the vaccine opportunity, or I should say many of our preschool students do not have. And then for our students at Vista Peak, due to the nature of the interactions at Vista Peak, our data does show us that we do have increased levels of transmission when COVID positive students are at Vista Peak. And so those are two populations, again, that could receive different guidance from us or different requirements as we move forward in Q3, and they likely would as well. For our parent communication, this one has received quite a bit of dialogue with our administrators and our other members of our Safe and Healthy Schools work team, that our parents would still be notified. So just as they are now for our close contact students, they would still be notified, However, the change would be that the requirement for exclusion would not be there. And so the parents would have that option, and if they chose to act on that option, then they would notify the school through the attendance piece, and they would be coded appropriately. We have a attendance code for students who are in isolation or quarantine. And of course, for those who do not elect that option and choose to send their child to school, they can only do so, and as I provided there in, or put in bolded terms, that the student has no symptoms. Because as you know, if a child has symptoms, then they are treated as what we are called a COVID unknown in the public health community. And so they would need to be subject to a negative test, and we'll get into that in the next slide, if they were to come back to school before the expiration of the isolation or quarantine period. Okay, and then with our high school specific parent population, we would communicate to that school community when the outbreak is declared by Maricopa County. As you know, the parent communication between our high school and our elementary schools is different due to the nature of the classes that the students take. I think that it is well known as far as that the amount of interactions that our high schoolers have occurs at a much greater rate than they do for our elementary students. And the work that I mentioned in the prior slide that is required, it is incredibly, it's a lot of hours that our high school administrators take to do this because of the nature of those interactions. So because of that, for our high school population, we would be communicating when the outbreak is declared. And so that would be a difference between our two levels in our safety plan. So Q3 safety plan updates that would remain the same. Just as I indicated in the previous slide, symptomatic students or students that show symptoms of COVID, they still would need to be at home, and they could not be at school. And so in order for those students to return to school before that 10-day isolation period has been completed, they would need to show that negative test, just as they have done for our entirety of our time during the pandemic, and show that test result to our school nurse and our school administration if they were to come back early before that, and as well that their symptoms would be resolved. DVUSD, as it's indicated in this slide, we will continue to support our parent community with our test supply kits. We do have a good supply that is coming in through Maricopa County and through ADHS to help us with that. We also, with the help of Ms. Mock, continue to be able to procure some test kits as well. So we will continue to do that. And then we also will continue our testing at our district office, and I'll go into that in a later slide. As far as our COVID reporting expectations, again, this would remain the same for our parents. And so it was requested that we remind parents of our reporting site, which again is up here, dvusd.org/COVID reporting, a very user-friendly URL. So for parents that would go there, they would see what they need to do in terms of reporting both to the district and to the school level, to the school nurse and the administration, if a positive COVID case is in the family. ALS, so Administrative Leadership and Services, and our campus schools would still maintain our current internal reporting systems. And that's an important piece because I am sure that some folks wonder that with this change, is the district saying that they're just not looking at the data anymore, and that could not be farther from the truth there, that we absolutely want to keep our same systems. The board is fully aware of the tightness that we have in terms of monitoring where cases are with the schools, and our consultations that we do with our school administrators in order to maximize or increase our safety at our schools for our students and for our staff. So we would keep those same systems and keep that communication and consultation process going. And then our district dashboard, we would continue as well for Q3. Okay, for Q3 safety plan additional updates for our visitors and volunteers. I know that there are many community members that are quite interested in this one as well. And so we are looking at this through a soft exit for some of our measures, if you will, in this. So we have our current parameters through January, and then we will revisit it at the end of January for this. I would say that I do anticipate there being some revisions to this beginning February the 1st. And this was at the request of many members of our Safe and Healthy Schools work team. They asked to keep this again for a few more weeks throughout January, and then most folks feeling that it would be time to open up even more. If you recall, in Q2, we did begin our phased reopening, if you will, for our visitors and our volunteers. And so it's not that they can't be on campus now, it's that there are some limitations to that, or some restrictions, if you will. So with our volunteers, we do have some number limits for our volunteers when they're on campus, and we do have some time parameters as well. Our PTAs, though, are open. They can have events on campus after school. They can also have events on campus during the day. So PTAs that have our fundraisers, or some of them have some holiday type of events or activities that they do, those PTAs have been able to do those events, and they've been able to be on campus, again, provided that they operate within some of the parameters that we have. Visitors as well, again, have been welcome to be on campus if they are there for instructional purposes. And so we have had visitors who are there for many of our CTE classes, many of our fine arts courses, because they do have a instructional purpose. And so we would certainly continue that. And in addition, as I indicated, I would expect that to open up even more beginning February 1st and beyond. And I would certainly keep the governing board apprised of that throughout January in our board updates and our Safe and Healthy Schools board reports. Okay, for our COVID-19 testing opportunities, again, I spoke to this a little bit before, but just to reiterate, at our district office, we do continue to offer testing opportunities. We did have a change in our schedule. So whereas we had 3 days before, county has not been able to continue its relationship with our vendor, with the vendor that we have been using. And so we have a new vendor that is able to work with us on Tuesdays and Fridays during the same time frame between 11 and 2. And that takes place right out here at our district office. The lines are not long. And so I would encourage folks who would like to take advantage of that opportunity to know that you can come and get that test in a fairly expeditious manner. Note there during our winter break that we have testing on 12/28 only, and then we'll resume back to the Tuesday, Fridays once the Q3 starts. And then, as I mentioned, we'll continue supporting our schools with the home test kits, provided that the supply is there. Okay, for our communication, there has been communication with public health officials and some of the leaders of Maricopa County Department of Public Health. That was on November 1st and December the 7th. I can let you know that I did present this plan to Public Health on December 7th, and there was no stated opposition from county to the plan. I also indicated that to you in an update. The one item that Public Health did, I don't know if it was a request or more of a statement, just reminding us about the provisions for outbreaks and needing to make sure that we keep our eyes on outbreaks when those occur, because there will be some that occur in Q3. And of course, I reassured them that we would do so just as we have done in the past. We would continue to do so in the future for that. Our Safe and Healthy Schools work team, although we have had many informal conversations with members of that team last 6 weeks, I would say, regarding where we may or may not go. We finalized our formal plan, if you will, with a meeting this morning with the team, and that is a very large group that is comprised of stakeholders from all over the district. And so the team felt good about this particular plan. They felt confident that it would work and that it was a good step for our schools. Our administrative staff and nurses, as far as all of them, we plan to get in front of them tomorrow, Wednesday, and to do a webinar that would be with our lead nurse, Jackie Duarte, and myself, presenting to the K-12 campus administrators and the nurses and any other front office staff that wanted to join to get a full briefing on where we're going for Q3 and a chance to ask questions if they were to have any. And then for our DVUSD staff community, tomorrow we do have our Communication Council fireside chat that was scheduled well in advance, and so it is well timed for us to review these changes to our plan moving forward in Q3, and it's also an opportunity for us to talk about other items that are of interest to our staff. And then, of course, we would look to provide written communication to the staff as well before the end of the day on Thursday, December the 16th. And then to our parent community, as it's stated there, we would absolutely work to ensure that there's communication to them before the end of the week so that they are clear as to what is happening come January 4th, 2022. Okay, and with that, I will pass it to you, Jenna.
All right, good evening again, President O'Brien, governing board members. We in HR thought it might be nice this evening to bring to you an update on the health side of the this evening's report for all of our employees. You may recall a couple of months ago, I shared with you that we had established a job description for health and productivity liaisons at all of our work sites. So we were able to formally establish that committee at the end of the first quarter. Each campus and department has provided a liaison who meets the criteria and has agreed to perform the job description. So essentially, what our goal is to do this year is to gather each representative, educate, and help them develop plans at their specific site to address both the work site stresses and home types of stresses that employees can face. So specifically on the work site, we spent time educating these liaisons on strategies that they could utilize in addressing relationships at work, how to better value and create meaning in jobs, how to establish processes for input in the work that they are doing, and building good, effective recognition plans. We also spend time on these specific topics at pre-K-12 in our monthly meetings. On the other side, the life factors, we spent some time looking at things that could be distractors for being productive in your work. And those things could include physical or emotional issues or problems with health, could include personal relationships or life situations that have drastically changed, or problems with finances and legal support. So again, these liaisons are learning how to help their campuses address the work side while providing information and resources on what Deer Valley offers when it comes to the personal side. And we can go to the next slide. So far, our liaisons have shared that these are the things that they have already pushed out: monthly newsletters, wellness tips and activities, staff activities with social and emotional focus, gratitude activities, and so forth. You can read the list on your own. But we have been happy to see that they've been excited and have already begun the work. The steering team is also currently working on developing a schedule for the upcoming semester so that we have something specific to roll out for each month, and that each campus can have a resource to attach to. We also are talking to Valley Schools. I didn't highlight that in the first slide. Valley Schools is providing many resources and trainings for each work site if they would like to capitalize on that opportunity. And then just to provide you with additional update regarding what we've shared in the past with any vaccine mandate or testing mandate for our employees, we have no new information at this time, but we are working with our statewide personnel academy on Thursday, and we'll be meeting with attorneys, and they're supposed to be providing us with additional updates. We also did recently learn that there could be guidance specifically to our Head Start group that would be outside of that OSHA requirement, so our attorneys should be addressing that as well. And once we have that information, I might be able to provide it in this week's update.
Thank you, Jenna. And if I'm not mistaken, Jenna, was that photo from your most recent department meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, it was? Okay, super. Yeah, so I think that's good
Okay.
modeling.
I'm coming to Jenna's department meetings then.
Okay, and so with that, President O'Brien, that concludes our safe and report, and absolutely entertain questions at this time.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Board members? Mrs. Paperman?
My question is, what determines of COVID outbreak within each site?
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, an outbreak is declared by Maricopa County Department of Public Health when a case is spread in the school.
Okay. Also, parents are going to be given the options if for a student to quarantine. But if a student has the symptoms, then they need to have their child tested. So my question is, how soon can they get the results so they don't have to be quarantined 10 days?
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, students can get home test kits from us, and so those results are immediate for our families. And for our district-provided testing, the results come back within 36 hours for them. So as long as they tested on the day 6, for those that chose to do that, they would be able to return. But for those that did not choose to do that, they would not need to do that testing.
Okay, so parents do have the options to do that, and students can return right away to school.
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, yes, that is correct, provided the students do not display symptoms.
Okay. I also have a question on employee health. My question is, what is improved communication and research activities?
I'm sorry, Ms. Paperman, your mic cut out, so I
Yeah,
didn't hear
sorry.
your question.
Yeah, what is improved communication and resources and activities on the employee health?
So many of our campuses identified that they had not been communicating effectively or routinely what resources employees had options for. They also identified that they needed to be communicating more regularly in the area of recognition, or that there would be a structure in place so that there were a variety of types of recognition. So overall, just improved communication in the areas of health and productivity. Each campus addressed that in a different way.
Okay, I appreciate this because I know we're in the news throughout the country with teachers. I know one of the major issues that I see even with other districts is this year, for whatever reason, we have so much task on our plates. Teachers coming in earlier in the morning, leaving late, working 8 hours or more on the weekend. So my concern would be at the end of the year, we don't want teachers, looking maybe in a different district, the grass is greener, and it's already difficult to get substitutes. So I think as a district, our goal is, what are we going to do in each site to retain our teachers or to even retain our classified staff? Thank you.
And I would add to that, Ms. Paperman, that the work HR is doing with that extends to departments as well at the district level, not just at the campuses. So I know even with our own department, ALS, we are having our own health and productivity goals now as far as step challenges and other things like that for our group. So it extends both to campuses and the departments.
Other questions? Mrs. Fisher?
Since we were on HR, I'll start backwards. We've always had a health and wellness or a wellness program. Was it just that it wasn't being utilized or it wasn't being shared out, and that's why? Because I mean, this is kind of what we've seen over the years. So it's just improvement in doing that.
It's a good question. There was a program initiated by Valley Schools, and we did have something called a wellness champion with a job description that was put forward by the Valley Schools group. It did not catch a significant amount of momentum, and we didn't have a representative at every work site. So we worked with the continuous improvement department with Dr. Tunis, and last year decided that it would be a really good idea to systemically look at this and attach it to priority area 2. And at the administrative conference, the opening this last cycle, so in July, we introduced this concept. So we're providing some education to all of our leaders every month, and we're providing some ideas, and we've rolled out a survey that our sites could utilize to figure out on which side. When I shared, there are things that you can look at on the workplace side, and there are things that are distractors at home. And they could utilize this assessment to see where their priority would be with their staff, and then tackle it accordingly. And we're providing some options and ideas. And next year, we're dabbling in it this year, and next year it will even stronger. Where we're leaning on Valley Schools or right now is that they do have quite a robust menu of options and people that will come in and help. So that's why they've been pairing with us and helping us, and will deploy whatever it is that we need. But we did change the job description because it's bigger and broader than what a wellness coach did before.
Does our benefits individual attend a lot of the Valley schools? They have annual meetings to discuss a lot of this. Do they attend those?
The liaisons don't attend them, but
No, our benefits coordinator or administrator.
yes,
or
they do,
whomever they have.
and now I do as well.
Okay.
So yes, they participate, and fortunately, Valley Schools has also recently hired specialists in these areas, doctor, and so they help us, and they meet with us individually, and at our last health and productivity liaison meeting, they were there.
Okay, because I know that was a significant for us in the past, and especially Darlene, if she's still there, she's awesome. So I'm glad to hear that. One of the, kind of just hit the other side. Looking at, we have essentially, so it's 10 days, the quarantining was 10 days. So basically 14,000 days were lost in the last 3 weeks. Not all for one kid, but in kids. That's how many days were lost due to quarantining. So I'm glad we're not going to do that anymore. There are districts that have not been doing it all along, and they have not lost that learning. So I'm glad we move forward with that. The one concern that I do have is when you say symptomatic students will still need to, my biggest concern with virtually everyone in my family has had COVID. My mom just lost her sense of smell and taste, no other symptoms. My brother was sick as hell. My other sister, she never noticed anything. It just depended on the person. My husband, who has horrible allergies, never got COVID, but he always had a runny nose. He always had the cough. You would think he had COVID. Never tested positive. There are so many illnesses that are COVID-like symptoms. What's going to be our criteria for putting kids out based on symptoms? Because if it's a runny nose, that's most K-8 kids for a good chunk of the year in Arizona. So what's our criteria? Is it a fever? Is it just a runny nose? Is it, what? Do we have a set standard?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, the symptoms are listed on our website. We have I think it's dvusd.org/symptoms for us. And so, but I think one of the issues you're referring to is students perhaps who have chronic allergies, et cetera, and that's not a new thing, what you're raising for us. We've been dealing with that since the start of the pandemic. And so our nurses are well-equipped and have done a good job working with that. They have documentation for students who have conditions such as chronic allergies. And so that is something that they have worked with and will continue to do for students who are in that type of situation.
Okay, because that is one of the major complaints that I do get, is that my kids are not allowed back in school and they just have allergies. We can show they have allergies, and so that's all I can go off of is they are, that's one of my largest complaints I get from community members.
Thank you.
The other thing that's concerning is this is our health and safety report, but I see nothing about safety. You hear all the time with inappropriate posts being made or kids saying, someone's bringing us something or what have you. I would really like to see more about actual safety in the report. We're so focused on COVID that we forget that there's a whole world out there. An interesting thing I saw, and specifically in this area, I was kind of surprised not to see it because it was just on the news, is we are up 17% since the past year in suicide attempts. The Lifeline call center is up 30%, majority of which is young girls. And that's just this year. It's just a statistic that was out in our news. I appreciate that we've had to focus on COVID because the world has focused on COVID.
Sure.
But I would really just like to see us focus on kids and students. And of all the diseases that are going to get them, it's most likely not COVID. Suicide's a big one. Meningitis is a big one. Other students can be a big one, apparently. We just had a shooting down at Chavez High School, and that was not the first shooting for Chavez. And it was a ghost gun, and there's ghost guns. The increase in ghost guns is significant, and we wouldn't even know to detect them. So I just would like to see a little bit more focus on actual safety rather than just being focused on COVID.
Thank you.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. I know we've talked about it several times before over the last 2 years, but in reference to the class notifications that go out, like for pink eye and strep throat and lice and all of that, is it possible to have something like that go out for COVID instead of necessarily contract tracing all of the time? I know, speaking as a parent, if I get a strep notice home and my kids say that their throat is sore, then I'm more likely to believe that they might have strep throat and look for, symptoms of strep throat rather than thinking it's allergies. The same as, for COVID, if I knew that my child was around somebody that had COVID and they start to have a runny nose or a cough or a fever, I might be more, I might think that it might be something else besides, a common cold, and would get a test rather than saying, oh no, I think you're fine, you should be able to go to school. And I know that we chose not to do that before because it wasn't something that the county said that we needed to do or recommended or anything, to that sort. However, I think that there is a group of parents that are watching the meeting or who will hear about the meeting later and are going to have a little bit of a freak out that things are drastically changing. And I know that we can't be all things to all parents and to all people, and we're trying to do what's in the best interest for students, and everybody's opinion might be a little bit different on what that looks like. So I think that if we are not going to have a mandatory quarantine, then and I want our administrators and our nurses to be able to do the job that we hired them to do, not necessarily the job that county health has an unfunded mandate for them to do. I want us to get back into the business of educating students and not tracking COVID cases. So I'm curious, have you thought about that, or is that a discussion that the team has had?
I'm sure. President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, I appreciate that question, Ms. Reed. That is something that has come up, and I can actually foresee something like that perhaps coming in Q4 for us as far in terms of how contact tracing evolves. Okay, and so doing something broader like that instead of notifying a select number of folks could be something that we entertain for quarter four. But for quarter three, administrators and the other members of our group, it was not unanimous, but close to unanimous to keep the same system that we're using so that those folks in our K-6, K-8, and middle schools who were in the proximity would still get that notice for that close contact. But yes, we would certainly look at perhaps doing something like that in the future.
Okay, and maybe I misunderstood in the presentation, so please clarify or reiterate for me. But the difference between K-8 and high school, so I know that, can you go over that one more time? As far as contract tracing?
President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, certainly. So as our last two bullet points show here on this slide, you can see that for K-6, K-8 middle schools, that the parents of those students who have been identified as being in close contact will still be notified that their child was a close contact. The difference, of course, there then is with the direction that they are provided, that they would then have the option if they wanted their child to quarantine or not. And with our high school parent population, we would communicate with the community when an outbreak is declared. And so, as you know, Ms. Reed, from being a parent, there are parameters that we must do through executive order when outbreaks occur. And so we notify not only the parents involved there, we notify the entire school community, which includes the parents and the staff when that occurs.
Thank you. So just to clarify, if I had a ninth grade student and there was somebody who sat next to her that had COVID, the school would still contract trace to be able to identify who those people were, but those parents would not necessarily be notified. Is that right? Or am I hearing wrong?
No. Again, so the second to last bullet point, that's for K-6, K-8, and middle school. And then for high school, that communication would occur when there's an outbreak. So the example that you posed is not an outbreak. That would be an example of an individual case occurring at a school.
Yes. So they would not be notified
Correct.
for the individual case.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm to my earlier point is that, and I mean, I guess we could just presume that everybody, you know, around you has COVID or could have COVID. I'm trying to I'm trying to look at the different lenses from all of the different parent groups that we hear from and that we're going to continue to hear from. And I think that for me, I would feel more comfortable as a parent to know that there was an exposure in my child's classroom, that somebody in my child's classroom had COVID. So I knew what to look for. I knew the symptoms rather than I'm the tough parent, right? Like my kids know how to try to get out of school. Oh, I'm tired. My throat hurts. My tummy hurts. Mommy, I don't want to go to school. I mean, that's right. They pretend to go throw up in the bathroom. So I don't, they don't have to go, you have to be a detective sometimes as a parent to be able to realize, if your kid is really sick or not. But what I'm saying is that I would believe my child more that they were really sick if I knew that there was an exposure. That's all. And I don't know how to fix that in high school. I know high school is a beast in and of itself because we have kids that are switching classes. But I know that parents are going to ask, and that's going to be a concern. So I just want to address it and maybe have you consider it and talk to the team about and the high school principals about how they would work around that. So.
Sure, President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, it is certainly a fair question to ask. I guess I would respond in two ways, Ms. Reed. The first part is, of course, if a child is symptomatic, regardless of the exposure, the expectation is the expectation, as far as the child would not be at school. So again, whether there was someone next to them or not that had COVID-19, they would need to go through the protocol, which we have gone through as far as having the negative test. So that would remain the same regardless. As far as the communication, I would say going back to our transmission rates, that the expectation that has been placed upon us, it's an unreasonable expectation and burden that has been put on all of our administrators. But when you look at our high school administrators who are looking at 7 different periods for our students, and many of whom are participating in other extracurricular activities, whether it be sports, band, clubs, et cetera, that, again, given that a relatively low transmission rate from what we have seen in our data 2 years now, that is something that we feel comfortable with moving forward.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway?
Thank you for all of the information, Ms. Moffett, also with the employee health things at the work site, because I know that the work-life balance is pretty important, and when somebody doesn't know that, sometimes things go bad. Dr. Zerback, and thank you very much for your information. I'm wondering, with this, the meeting that you guys had to shore this up was today?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, yes.
Okay, it just, when you read it, it's such a departure from what we were doing. It felt almost like maybe we should have, and let me know how you thought about this, what your rationale was, waited until perhaps the second board meeting in January to see what the numbers came back, to give all of the parents an idea to get ready for it, because this is a departure from what we were doing. I think it is well researched. However, we have been going by the Maricopa County Department of Health, and now it seems like all of a sudden we're not. I mean, we're staying within guidelines, but this is not something that they have put out to do. So I think for some parents to get their heads wrapped around it, they might have liked more than, an hour or two to figure this out. So when you guys were making these final decisions, you thought about all that?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, absolutely. And I do understand what you're saying as far as making a break from county guidance from where we have been going forward. A couple of things again. County did not state opposition to our plan. And furthermore, they too are thinking about new ideas, given that the vaccine is available for the vast, vast majority of the students that are in our K-12 public schools. And so as far as our parent communication, I think we feel comfortable as far as, again, with the 2 weeks that are in between. And I understand the holidays. I think that's part of what you're saying too, as far as folks are busy and whatnot, but we will certainly have, and we already have lined up a multi-faceted approach as far as from district communication to school level communication, because we do know that some parents will pay closer attention at the school level than they might at times from the district level to make sure that the word gets out. We are putting this in place for Q3 because we would like to minimize in Q3 and Q4 the number of days that our students could be out for potential quarantines.
And then we don't have any our liability would not go south because we're not following the direction of Maricopa County Health.
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, as far as liability and the reasonableness piece, I think, again, due to the addition of the vaccine, is a piece now that all parties are starting to talk about things differently with respect to these mitigation and prevention measures. And so I
Okay.
don't know, Dr. Finch, if you wanted to add anything to that, but that is the key piece, Ms. Ordway, as far as since everyone now, and when I say everyone again, it's
Right,
I'm talking
within the-
99%, 99.9% of our folks, that is more of a game changer now as far as how things are done. Dr. Finch?
Just to reemphasize the vaccine availability, that was a major player in the decision. I think the next piece that you already mentioned as well, I'll just come back to it, is the statute, what's written. So we have what came down from the top as far as direction. That's why he's heading in the outbreak direction versus the county's optimum position, I think is the right words there. We know, and I just talked to the NEVIC superintendents today, we know everyone is doing their own plan and some version of it. I know that particular Peoria is going to be basically the same as us. Scottsdale's moving in that direction as well. PV is as well. So what I call the big four are all changing their plans as well, all at the same time. And with the thought being that it gives time for parents over the break to adjust and learn more accordingly, because obviously we'll be posting, sending letters, et cetera. So the two pieces I think that changed the game for us was the availability of the vaccine and then following the statute.
Right, and then we're going to work on having some more opportunities for the younger set to get them, Gary. Are we still?
That is correct. We have had a couple of schools that have expressly articulated an interest in that at the onset of Q3.
Okay, and this is going to be the last one, okay. Addressed at the high school level, I think that we tried really hard to do that, but I think that as hard as we tried, it was unreliable because you don't know. Those kids are so many places and moving around that I think that the outbreak communication is probably going to be the only real communication someone could have in the high school. So that might be a hard thing, but I do understand that. And last but not least, I know that nurses do this, but how are we going to monitor the symptoms? Could you just go through that in a general way?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, so the first step to that is a community responsibility as far as monitoring symptoms, that is a parent expectation that parents are monitoring symptoms of their children, and so if they display some of the symptoms that we referred to earlier, which there are many, for that they would be our first line of defense, if you will, in terms of monitoring for those. And then if folks do observe symptoms in the schools, or if students voice that they are not feeling well, students do go to the nurse, and the nurse then they do their thing as far as working with the students. Again, they have documentation of the student's medical history, so they know what has been ailing a student in the past and what has not, and so what may be new or what may be old. And so through that, they go through their protocol, and then they would work with parents, et cetera, from there.
So truly, other than specific protocol for COVID, this is what we would do to monitor any symptoms that you have for strep or mono or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
You're welcome. Dr. Zerbach, on the parent communication for our K-6, K-8, and middle schools, does that mean that the administration is still having to do the same amount of contact tracing?
President O'Brien, it does mean that they would still engage in those activities to identify close contacts.
Okay. And are they not as burdened as our high school administrators by that?
President O'Brien, I would describe it as all of our administrators, our nurses, and our front office staff have had an immense burden for that. And I know you know that, but stating that for our community, it has been a monumental task that has been given to us. The one difference for our K6s and our K8s at many of their grade levels, not all, is the fact that they are self-contained in their classes. And so instead of looking at 8 to 10 different potential settings, such as they do at the high school level, it may be limited to one from there. Now, that said, is this where we believe we will ultimately be in Q4 or next year? Perhaps not, as we would look to continue to look at our data, see where we're at, and then potentially move towards something more like what I described at the high school level for all of our students, K-12 moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, if we will move on to public comments.
Okay, we have one. Chad.
Okay, we have one public comment.
Chad, and I can't read if your last name is Moreland.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow, look at me go. Okay, so the board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute limit, the president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
Please state your name for the record, and then your time will begin, sir.
My name is Chad Moreland. Thank you. I've been in Arizona for going on 7 years, and in this district for that long. And I've only been to, this is my third meeting, but this is the third time that I've listened to the Safe and Wellness report. And I just want to raise a concern that I understand, and it's very detailed, and I appreciate the level of detail about COVID. But I just want to make sure or interject that the classical or historical concerns of parents include a lot of physical activity, domestic violence, other types of violence that occur, sexual misconduct. We hear about all these things that are occurring in our schools, but we're not getting a report on it. We're not seeing, I mean, how many kids are being suspended on a monthly or quarterly basis? How many are repeat offenders? How many are expelled? How many teachers are going through different types of misconduct? These are things that are concerns of parents, and I'd like to see those kind of data reports included in this safety and wellness, because it is important. The physical security and safety of our kids are as important as the wellness, the social, emotional wellness of our kids. But the physical, I think, should start first, and we need to know, out of 30,000 kids, how many of them are going through a tough time, are dealing with incidents where law enforcement have to be called onto the campus, where drug-related incidents are occurring. A lot of these historical categories that have been measured and baseline set as to what a safe school is. And I just like to, if possible, I've mentioned it to you before, and if, at some point go through and see what it would do, what kind of process it would be to bring that forth, either on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Appreciate them. Okay, we will move on to old business, 6A.
I would make recommendation that the governing board accept the administrator's recommendation to consider and, if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds of the district.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Miglerino or Mrs. Mock? I'm sorry. I always do that. I always say person. Mrs. Mock?
President O'Brien, thank you. We have no changes from the presentation that we made at the prior, well, I shouldn't say no change, small change. We spoke briefly at the very tail end of the prior meeting about the need for this, which would be our second sale from the 2019 authorization for school bonds. When we discussed it at the last meeting, we thought that we would be recommending or requesting authorization to sell up to $40 million. The only change is that we are looking at $35 million instead, decreasing the overall authorization just slightly. And again, this is to complete summer projects and other construction projects that have all been approved by the governing board, such as the Innovation Center, Elementary 32, Media Center remodels at our high schools, and other ongoing projects. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions, board members? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
You want to move to consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
I would just ask that the governing board approve consent agenda items 7A through 7O with the exception of 7H that will be considered for separate consideration.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
I would
Ooh.
ask, can I go?
Yes.
I would ask that the governing board approve consent agenda item 7H.
And do I have a second?
I second.
Nope, you can't.
Oh, I can't. I can't second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher, for the second. Mrs. Reed is not participating in this for a potential conflict of interest. So are there any questions or discussions?
Nope.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, the motion passes 4-0-1. I didn't.
There it is. It's up now.
There it is. Okay. Thank you.
No, that was us.
All right.
Moving on to 8A.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, ask that the governing board approve all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy GCCE.
I have a second.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
All right, there it is. All right, going to 8B, I would ask that the governing board authorize administration's recommendation of the provision for 2 weeks, up to 80 hours of COVID-19 related sick leave at the employee's regular rate of pay to employees who are experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and are seeking medical diagnosis or who test positive to the COVID-19 virus and are in self-isolation and cannot telework due to the illness or their job duties, or who are assigned to human resources to quarantine due to close contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 and cannot telework due to their duties.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion on this item, or would you like to hear from Mrs. Moffett?
I just have a little one for her.
Mrs. Fisher?
Um, okay, I understand if they have to go out because they're actually sick. Is it, they think they have a symptom, they're gonna go get checked? We're gonna pay them for the full 10 days or what have you? Or they go get checked, they came back negative, they come back to work. We pay them for the one.
So, first off, this doesn't change our current practice. You're just requesting what is our current practice? Okay. So if an employee is symptomatic or presents a symptom that's listed in the same list that Dr. Zerbach requested, then they may not report to work. And we do have the ability to issue them a COVID test immediately, and we can know whether or not it is COVID within about 15 minutes. If it is a negative test, then they would utilize, and they are too ill to work, don't want to come to work, or even have a temperature, we don't want them here at work with the temperature, then they would be utilizing their normal sick time that they're allocated. If they've had a COVID exposure and it comes out negative, sometimes we may do an additional test if we know it's a significant exposure. And if neither of those, and they do have COVID, then they would be 10 days.
And they can only utilize this once?
Only can use it once. And if they've already utilized it under FFCRA, they do not qualify for additional 10. So this is 10 to an employee that has not already used 10 in the past. So if they've already used 5, then they do qualify for an additional 5. But if they've exhausted their 10, they will not be allocated more. If the board approves this evening, it would expire at the end of this fiscal year, at the end of June.
What are we doing if they do get COVID twice? I got it twice. I mean, and I actually did take 2 weeks off each time. I got very sick.
And some employees deal with a COVID case that lasts longer than 10 days. It might be a long COVID case. They would utilize their sick time or potentially qualify for FMLA leave. On FMLA leave, as you know, they could utilize their sick time or be out on leave without pay.
Do we have a donation plan?
We do have a donation.
So if they exhaust
option.
it, they can take that avenue?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Sorry, Mrs. Taylor, thank you.
Mrs. Taylor will register Mrs. Reed's aye vote.
So shall we go to 8C?
Yes, ma'am.
I would ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to consider and if deemed advisable to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of sale of refunding. What? Bonds to the district? Oh, it wasn't me, so, okay, I'm done.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. I'm going to get this one right. Mrs. Mock?
I will attempt to explain this appropriately. The refunding and refinance is a little bit more of Mr. Miglorino's wheelhouse. But really, this is at the recommendation of the folks at Piper Sandler who administer the bond sale for us. We do have an opportunity to refinance some of our older bonds at this time, and we would only do that typically in conjunction with another bond sale. And so the authorization for the sale of the $35 million gives us the opportunity to take a look at this. It could save us potentially $200,000 in interest costs in the future. And so what we would do is take a look at what opportunities are available for us at the time of the sale of the $35 million bond, as long as the governing board approves it this evening. And then we would move forward with doing that and saving some money for the school district and the taxpayers.
Questions? Mrs. Fisher?
So you're really not going to know if this is beneficial until the actual date of the sale, correct?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, It is true that these are negotiated sales, so it will depend on what happens with the market and when we can put the package together to know exactly what the sale is. So what we will typically do is set a threshold for savings because it's not worth the exercise. It's not that the savings isn't something that we want to consider. It's that the expense of getting to the savings can sometimes be greater than the savings itself. And quite frankly, $200,000 on a $3 billion assessed valuation is a very small amount. But again, we want to take advantage of the opportunity. We're only considering this, as Ms. Mock mentioned, because we need a sale of the 2019 bond authorization anyhow. So we can package it together, roll up some of the fixed costs, the attorneys, the co-managing agencies that we use to help us with the bond sale. So if it's not advantageous to us, we won't refund the bonds.
So when the time comes, who will make that determination?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
When the time comes, who will make that determination? A combination recommendation of yourself and our attorneys as the sale moves forward?
I'm sorry, President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, the resolution is authorizing me to make that determination.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Is that correct, Mrs. Taylor? Thank you. It did pass unanimously.
Moving on to 8D, I ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the special education services agreement between Deer Valley Unified School District and the Dysart Unified School District.
I second.
So we have a motion and a second, and my notes say one thing, but I'm going to go to Dr. McCusker because she pulled her microphone close and she's smiling at me.
Good evening, Governing Board. Yes, I gave a good visual prompt. President O'Brien and Governing Board members, Dr. Finch, this is a wonderful opportunity for Deer Valley Unified School District to enter into the proposed IGA agreement with Dysart Unified School District. This is an opportunity for our Vista Peak campus, which is a comprehensive campus in our school district that provides very necessary supports for our neediest and most deserving students. And so this opportunity would allow us to actually tuition in students from the Dysart School District. They have expressed a high interest in Vista Peak for a number of reasons. I can certainly elucidate on those. A few are that we have highly trained staff. We are a comprehensive, Vista Peak, a comprehensive school, K-12 comprehensive campus, unlike other private placements that sometimes can be found in strip malls, sometimes do not look like a school. And so we have a lot to offer in that venue. It is a Boys Town trained campus. And finally and foremost, it was a recommendation from our futures analysis, where that group said, you know, there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of opportunity to showcase all the amenities of this amazing campus. And so we were contacted if we were interested, and I wanted to bring it forward for the board's consideration.
Thank you, Dr. McCusker. Do we have questions?
I can add one more piece to it.
Dr. Finch.
The not only was it in the futures, but it is part of the plan to expand the first services at Vista Peak that Dr. McCusker referred to. What I wanted to note to the board, the reason why we pulled it to draw more attention to it is that in the future we will be working with other school districts that will have the same interest. And so in the future, you'll see other MOUs that are the same or similar come through the consent agenda side. Make sense?
Questions?
I would rather agreements like this not come through consent. I would prefer they actually come for consideration.
If they're still the same, you want them all come through the front door?
I do, because I want people to be able to see what is exactly, especially when your special education is so different.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I just think it's
We
really
can do that.
important. And I'm sure it's in there. I read it very briefly because I knew you had read it, so it wasn't as significant. What's the transportation situation?
Excellent question, President O'Brien and Ms. Fisher. Currently, I did attach a rate sheet for review, and as our school district is experiencing transportation shortages, we will require, if the IGA is agreed upon this evening, we will require the district that is sending the student, in this case it would be Dysart Unified School District, to provide that transportation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And hearing and seeing no other comments, then I will call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
So we'll move to 8E. I would ask that the governing board accept the administration recommendation to pre-approve addenda as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. And this is submitted by Mr. Miglerino. Is there any discussion or questions?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Moving to 8. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. All the votes have been recorded, yes.
Moving to 8F, I would ask that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve a pre-construction job order with core construction for the high school media center modernization project.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve a cooperative job order contract. Do we have any questions or discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
All right, then we will move to 8G, and I would ask that the governing board accept the administration recommendation to approve 1 GPA contract with ADM Group as the architect for the classroom expansions at both Union Park and Sonoran Foothills schools.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussions on this item? Mrs. Fisher?
Are we sure this time? Because, I mean, didn't we just build Union Park? Did we just not plan adequately, or, because I don't want to keep paying construction companies to redo and redo and redo and add.
Yeah, President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, thank you for the opportunity to maybe clarify what our intentions are here. These are two of our newest campuses, Sonoran Foothills and Union Park schools. And when we build schools, we do provide a provision to expand the school to 4 classrooms at each of the campuses. What has happened in this vicinity, and I think this is driven a lot by commercial development that's happening, especially related to the TSMC project, but much of the undeveloped area was designated for commercial development, has been rezoned for residential properties. And so what's happening is we're experiencing much more growth than we had originally planned. So as a result of that, we had, on the consent agenda, we had some per unit agreements that the board approved on that consent agenda. We will be bringing a number of those to you over the upcoming months because of the number. I'm right now tracking, to provide some magnitude, I'm tracking over 4,000 multifamily homes that are being developed north of Happy Valley and south of Carefree Highway that are on the east side of I-17. These are all previously commercial zoned parcels that are now to potentially yield students that weren't in our original projections. So this would be able to expand both of those campuses by adding at least 4 classrooms to each of the campuses.
And that's why I asked the question. Is this adequate? Is this going to be enough, or are we going to be back here doing this again soon?
So President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, also in conjunction with the addition of these, at these two schools, we are also working with several of the folks that are involved in these developments, looking for a potential future school site. And Dr. Finch and I do have a meeting scheduled with the City of Phoenix representatives as well as State Land Department officials next week, so that we can get a better idea of what some of the longer range planning is to be able to try and identify where we might need to add additional schools, plural, in this particular region. So that would include both the east side of I-17 and the west side of I-17 in what's commonly referred to as Biscuit Flats.
So this is a Band-Aid for now.
I would consider this to be a Band-Aid. I think it's going to buy us some time. I think, not that we're hoping for this, because as we've told you with our own construction projects, some of the escalation costs were not foreseeable when we first programmed the bond. But some of the supply chain issues will maybe drag out some of these projects that will help us add more time to the equation so that we can try and get a better handle of what we need to do for a longer range plan beyond just the expansion of these two campuses.
Okay, thank you.
I can add two pieces to it as well. We correctly or wisely put water and sewer in those zones, and so we have prepads there as well, so it will save us money by using some wisdom early on in the equation. And the second part is, as these places expand, we are collecting rooftop dollars that help disperse some of the cost to us as well.
Okay. Not hearing or seeing any other comments or questions, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing no nays, we have a unanimous vote. Discussion item 9 is staff communications with students. Unfortunately, Mr. Warner is not feeling well, and so following protocol, he's not with us, so we will be moving this item to our next meeting in January. So we'll move to governing board reports. Mrs. Paperman.
Mine is short and sweet. I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday. Enjoy with your family, rest, and God bless.
Thank you, Mrs. Paperman. Mrs. Fisher?
I only have a couple things as well. The big things that I get from the community are quarantining. Sounds like we're resolving that. At least I pray that this is resolved. But the other concerns that I get a lot are the social emotional learning, and even just the label of social emotional learning, that bringing in questionable teachings and vendors who we know have questionable teaching, even if they're not adopted here. So I just really hope that in the new year, we are able to have some sort of a study session with our community, because ultimately these are their children, and I see it over and over again. Well, probably because it's hanging on a wall in my house. But you know, the verse says, "Train up a child in the way that they will go, and they will not depart." And that's a parent's choice. Parents choose what lessons their children learn. Parents choose their faith. Parents choose their religion, and the children may choose something different as they get older. But while that child is in their home, you know, they share that faith. They're taught that faith. That's what we are. Yeah, at least in my belief system, we are granted the privilege of having a child, and it is our job to teach that child. And someone who has a completely different religion from me, I'm sure that they feel the same about teaching their children their religion or their belief systems, because it's not always religion. I really am asking that we, as a board, honor our community to have those discussions with them. So many districts you see being torn apart because a certain curriculum vendor, not necessarily the curriculum is in that district, but the vendor is in that district, and parents are very upset. Some of them have valid concerns, and they really do find some significant things in their curriculum or in what's being taught to their children. But it's really tearing apart education. And I just would hate to see Deer Valley hit with a lot of what I see happening in other districts. And so it's just a request that we honor our community with an actual study session where they get to actually have more than 3 minutes to discuss a very vital topic for their children. Board relations, and I did send Ms. O'Brien an email earlier, and I know that the board is expecting that I would, because I have said that I will, and I will, sort through all the emails that I sent you to pull out the particularly hateful or inappropriate emails, in my opinion, and send them to you directly. But I do want to let the board know I return to work. I am an executive with my own governance teams that I have to respond to, and I will get them to you. Well, you have them, but I will pull out the specific ones and get them to you in time. I don't foresee this board holding accountability at the top. I just don't see that it's going to happen. And honestly, I don't want to be focused on something of that nature when we have kids to focus on. If Mr. Finch chooses not to talk to me, that's cool. He chooses to be offensive to me. I'm just not going to pay it. I didn't run for this board for that reason, to fight with anyone. I love Deer Valley. I always have. I have been here. I've raised 3 children in this district, and I've lost children in this district. I still have kids come by my house to talk about issues that they had even 10 years ago. So I don't know that the drama is necessary. I really don't, because I don't think it's going to be resolved with this current board. You will get them. I just don't know when. We are on a governmental fiscal year at my work. I still have my financial reporting to do, and I'm in the middle of doing a 5-year business plan. So you will get them sometime next year. I want to let IS&T know that I did stop by to visit them, and they were not there yet, and I'm sorry, and I will visit them. I do have a Christmas treat for them as well. I just have to tell you all, this is an amazing district. Whatever issues or problems we have, this is an amazing district. I was off last Friday for a holiday, and I just had a blast running around the district, just seeing some of what we have. Obviously, I couldn't go on campuses and see kids, so I focused on other areas, and text messaging and speaking with individuals throughout the district that I've known for many, many years. And this is still an awesome district. I want our employees to have a wonderful Christmas. I want them to take the time to enjoy their families. Whatever drama happens on a day-to-day basis, there's always something great at the end. You wake up some days and it's just like, oh my God, this is just a terrible day. Traffic was this. And it's so easy for us to focus on the bad things. And I just really hope that our staff can get a break and try and focus on the good things, on their family. It really hit home to me last night. I went to buy something for whoever I drew name for, and I was standing in the line last night at a store, and there was a little girl behind me, and her dad just, I shouldn't be here. Your mom should be here, and it didn't matter what this poor little girl did. She was just getting hammered, and I thought, I don't think he realizes what he's doing. Focusing on that negative, the little girl just looked like she was just ready to just lose it. And they happened to be checking out the same time we did. And I just walked over to her and I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, honey, I just want you to know, no matter what happens in your life, you are awesome. You are fearfully made in the image of God. And life is wonderful. She looked at me and she goes, oh, thank you. God bless you. We forget what we say, and that impact just does not stop. I don't want our employees to be so stressed out that they go home and snap at their family members. So take the time, take the break. Don't log in. Don't check your email. Don't get on social media. Don't Google anything that's not beneficial for your families. Take just 2 weeks and just love everything good in your life. And have a very Merry Christmas. And if you have a different holiday, enjoy that one. And I look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't start out and just say that in light of the news today, are my thoughts and my prayers and everything that I have within me are just going to the officer that was involved in the shooting today, and to our public safety family and partners. Thank you for all that you do to keep our community safe, and just know that during this time and this season, I think it's a little bit harder when we hear news like that, and knowing that the officer was so young. So please know that I am praying for you very fervently. In happier news, the last, 4 weeks, I have had the opportunity to work with our amazing school counselors and principals and nurses and social workers and Title I coordinators and to help bring Christmas and holiday spirit to our DVUSD families that are in need this year. And this is the 5th year that I've been able to help do this with the help of Mrs. O'Brien and Mrs. Ordway. And by far, this has been the biggest need. So I just want to say thank you to our community partners, our businesses that donated money so our teachers and nurses and social workers could shop for kids or could help buy food boxes so our kids could have food over break. I know that we weren't the only ones that were collecting and doing this. I know that Executive Cabinet did. I know that different departments all across the district did as well, and even our students did. So we have, for those of you who don't know, all of our schools have sister schools that they work with. So we pair our Title I schools up with other schools in the district. And so our students were adopting other students to ensure that they received a Christmas present or had food. So that's the news story. That's the news story, is that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in donated goods or in money were donated to our district over the last several weeks so that our kids could have Christmas. And so when we talk about educating the whole child, this is what we're talking about, that the public school system shouldn't have to do this. It's not required in ARS 15, right? That's not something that we're supposed to do, but we love our, sorry. Yeah, not to give you any ideas. But we love our community and our families and our students, and we want that they are well taken care of on our campuses. So thank you for all of you who have gone above and beyond to do those things this holiday season. And just a shout out to one of our business partners, Natalie and Company. For the last 5 years, she's let us use her location as a donation site. And so we've had community members that have gone and donated presents, and she stored them and kept them all safe for us until we could have our wrapping and send them on their way to their schools. I know that this has been another long, hard year, and we're all looking forward to winter break and to celebrating holidays with our loved ones. So thank you for all of your hard work this year. I know it's been tumultuous, to say the least. I'm hoping always that there are better days ahead, and wish all of you just rest and relaxation, and 2.5 more days. So I think we got this. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Ordway?
Mrs. Reed, 12-month employees have 3 whole days, so I'm just pointing that out. Anyway, for those 12-month employees, no, for everybody. The last couple of weeks, there have been sporting events, but mostly for this time of year, the fine arts with the music and the choirs, and maybe at Chick-fil-A, or maybe at Elevate Coffee, or maybe at a corner if a couple of them are on their way home and just decide that they're going to sing or play instruments. It's very inspiring. So awesome for that. But this year, with the help of the Education Foundation, I just want to thank Marie for including us in this opportunity to be a conduit of getting these materials, resources, and some of the stuff we bought was fun, was stuff that they wanted, not just that they needed. It's a little heartbreaking when a 7-year-old says one of the most important things they want is toothpaste and a toothbrush. So, not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that, I don't know how that makes you feel, but it's nice to be able to give them some things they need. And I wanted to thank Albertsons and Safeway, because they came through in a huge way with gift cards that we were able to distribute for groceries that perhaps they specifically bought themselves instead of just staples. Maybe they did buy or could buy a Christmas dinner, but they can also use that for gas at the different stations. But I think the last 3 years is different, as we have been giving and giving and giving of ourselves monetarily, time-wise, because everybody has been short on things, because it's been COVID and we've been isolated and we've been overworked. And so just this year, I think we did hit like a high note on the amount of donations, Mrs. O'Brien.
Yes, we did.
And and we also upped the amount of families. So however you want to look at it, I'm sorry that there's so many families that need it, but I am so happy and so thankful that there are not only corporations, but individuals that don't have that to give, that they give to. So thank you for the Deer Valley family, all employees, community members, fellow board members. We'll see you next year. And it sounds so far away, like we have so much time off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. And I'll touch on a couple of business items first. And I would welcome our parents who have concerns or questions regarding SEL. I would remind you, please reach out to your teachers and your principals with those concerns or questions. It's very important for our teachers and principals to know if you have questions or concerns with teachings, or if you need additional information. In addition, regarding the executive session that was originally scheduled for tonight, but we didn't have the additional material, that executive session will be held on January 25th. It was originally requested by Mrs. Fisher and Mrs. Reed, and I want to ensure that we follow up on and continue that discussion, not just continue it, but finish it up on that evening. And on to more fun stuff, like congratulations to Dr. Schwarting, our new principal of elementary number 32. And I am going to just tell you, it's hard to express my gratitude to the business partners and people in our community who stepped up on a moment's notice when asked for donations so that we could help not just families, the normal amount of families that we usually help, but additional amount of families, because this year has been particularly hard. The generosity of our community in businesses and people it was amazing. And in a very short period of time, we were able to raise over $17,000 to help our families. And so they didn't just get, as Mrs. Ordway referred to, as the toothpaste and the toothbrush, or the very responsible kids who they just wanted a mattress and some sheets. We were able to provide things that they hopefully will be excited to open up and get on Christmas Day, toys and gift cards and makeup and all those kinds of fun things. So I'm really honored and privileged to have been a part of that, and make sure, along with Deer Valley Education Foundation, Brennan was incredible to work with as a partner in this, and we look forward to hopefully making this a more permanent fixture of the foundation moving forward, so that our kids in schools have a place to go and a team of volunteers to work with from here on out. And it really is an honor to work with the ladies up at this dais and our folks in the schools. They're really, I can't say enough about all of the people that have already been mentioned before me. That's what happens when you get to speak last. A lot of it's already been said, but I do want to say thank you to all those people. And I do hope that our staff will get some rest and relax and hug those that mean the most to you. I have had in my prayers all day our young officer who was shot in the line of duty today. And so this is a hard time of year for that to happen. Not that it's ever a good time. And so please hold those you care about a little closer. Tell somebody you love them that you don't normally. And I can't tell you all how thankful I am. Every single employee, student, and parent and community member that works on behalf of Deer Valley and is part of Deer Valley. So it's really an honor and privilege, and I hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas or holiday, and I promise not to forget Dr. Finch like I did last time.
That's all right. I want to reemphasize 3 things that we've already hit, just to, again, educate the community and keep them apprised. The spending, the aggregate spending limit issue is not our problem. It is a problem that's been handed to us by the legislature. So at some point in the near future, I'm assuming the Supreme Court's going to rule on this in January. That's kind of the projection. But if it does not, it will be up to the legislature to get busy. So I may need your help in January, February, because March follows that, those 2 months. This has to be done quickly. So I'm sure it'll be highly politicized, but this is a problem that's not created by Deer Valley. It's created by the legislature to the tune of over $1 billion. So they knew it was coming, but they haven't made the choice to answer the call yet. So we'll watch the courts and see where it heads, and I will keep you in the loop.
That's over $1 billion for the state.
For the state.
Not for,
Yes.
I just want a clarification there. I don't want any emails.
We'll take the extra money.
We don't have $1 billion problem in Deer Valley.
We have a $40 million problem of the $1.2 billion from the statewide. I just talked to the NEVIC superintendents today. They're all in the same boat. The second thing I wanted to do, again, to reemphasize what Ms. Ordway said. It's fine art season. It's marching band season just ended. 4 of the 5 schools made to the playoffs. A lot of our teams did really well. And again, we use sport and fine art and choirs, dance, all that is all about teaching about life through the activity. And so I'm very proud of my coaches and teachers that use that opportunity to teach students about life. It's not necessarily about the trophy at the end. It's about the journey that they learn with cooperation, adversity, et cetera, that you learn in a sport or a club or a group activity, which in public schools is priceless. And last but not least, Ms. Reed was correct. Tens of thousands of dollars were given to the district through donations and monetary gifts to distribute to students. And I am amazed and have been since the first day I arrived and saw the Christmas holiday cycle go through, the communication between our systems with businesses and corporate entities that want to help us out, and families and schools. It is simply #extraordinary what we do here in Dew Valley. I would contend I've never seen it at this scale. Very impressed with our system and how we care for each other. And so, and again, thanks for the board to get involved as well. And Marie at the foundation, it's not if she's going to help us, it's when and how much. And she finds those connections for us to help those families in need. So again, thanks to the machine that supports each other and our community, which supports us. And last but not least, just enjoy the break for our staff. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to it. Get recharged and visit Santa and then head back. Thanks.
Okay, I would entertain a motion at 8:56 to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Hearing no nays, so we are adjourned till
Are we adjourning the last
2022.
meeting of the year?
Yes, we are.